Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Hello. Welcome to Escaping the Echo Chamber. Happy African History Month. Today, clearly, we're talking about a figure who could go without introduction because he's just that well known, that much of a staple of history, that that large of a figure in the civil rights movement. In fact, he has his own day, which is celebrated, which we celebrated last month. And yeah, he did so much. His courage is on full display. That he dedicated his life to fighting, and there's there's aspects of him that are more focused on than others. And that's a testament to the fact that there's certain things that the powers that be, the people in charge, they don't want to talk about, they don't want to focus on, they want to keep the masses focused on just things that they don't consider detrimental to their agenda. That's why you can't allow other people to define your history and the scope of it. So I think regardless of whether or not you agree with everything Martin Luther King Jr. did, you can't, a study of history isn't complete without discussing him. And there was a time when I was much less appreciative of who he was and what he accomplished. And now I see, well, number one, like I said, his courage. His courage was unquestioned. Unquestioned. His dedication, and this is an individual who fought, who was willing to put himself in harm's way, and he believed in the principles that he espoused. So he was dedicated to nonviolence, and whether or not you believe that is effective, this is what he believed, and he did manage to get a lot done with that philosophy. He put himself in harm's way of being sent to prison on numerous occasions, being beaten, and hey, like you have to realize that, like, if every leader was like that, even if you disagree with certain things or policies or strategies, if every leader was that dedicated, that focused, that willing to go the distance, like it would be, we'd be looking at a different world today. We really would. And there were, like, one of the interesting things is, I've talked about Martin Luther King Jr. in the past, and I wanted to make sure I acknowledged his title, doctor, because it's that aspect is often, I believe, forgotten. People see him as a minister, people see him as a great speaker, people see him as a very influential leader, but people forget, at least I don't see people really discussing that as much, how educated he was. From Morehouse, Crozier Theological Seminary to Boston University. Yeah, I mean, and the man had a PhD. So, like, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. it really helps you see, to better understand who he was. And especially this year, as I wanted to bring everything into having a cohesive theme, I think the level of his education is very important to acknowledge and understand certain things about him, about his approach to problem solving and his dedication to, and even not just his dedication, that those are more evidences of his character, his dedication, his bravery, his courage, but his strategy, his hopes, his hopes for the future. I think that is very closely tied into, his education and his upbringing. So his father was also a minister who also engaged was quite outspoken on civil rights. And he grew up he actually grew up in one of the black, because there was more than one Black Wall Street, but he grew up in a Black Wall Street. His family was well to do, and he grew up in a Black Wall Street. So it definitely is crucial to understanding who he is and what his vision for the future was. And there was, in fact, there's another aspect, because I touched on it earlier in this month when we were covering Kwame Nkrumah, and Kwame Nkrumah and MLK's links to each other. In fact, Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., was present at the independence of Ghana, at the ceremony. And he said, he cried. But so he's here in the United States and also traveled to Ghana, but he's seeing that there is a fight for Black liberation happening, not just in the United States. And that helped him. He was further motivated by seeing what Kwame Nkrumah was doing in Ghana, and Kwame Nkrumah's own dedication to nonviolence. And both of them were inspired by Gandhi. They looked at his example of nonviolence, and that helped to motivate them to keep nonviolence as a critical tenet of their philosophies. And so that's interesting, seeing the way that leaders helped each other, motivated each other, and gave each other the strength to go on, and not just in the same area, not just in the United States, but across the world, globally. So that's the whole Pan-African, the ideology of Pan-Africanism was so useful in helping Black leaders in different areas of the country, different areas of the world, different areas of the globe, of staying focused and realizing that they had to fight and even work with one another to achieve Black liberation. And so that is something that I think, and I'm gonna keep beating it like a dead horse, we need to pay attention to. So I've seen, because even earlier in this month, I've talked about some of the things I'm seeing in terms of like a rift between, Black Americans, Black Africans, and I see hope. I do see hope, because I do see that while there are some differences being highlighted, some of the individuals that the appearance of the hostility that exists isn't necessarily because of their own hatred, but of a perceived, what they perceive the other to be feeling towards them. But that's, like I said, this is why history is so important, because we got to realize how integral Black people all over the globe were into helping Black people all over the globe advance and stop the coordinated attack on Black people, because it was a coordinated attack and it was a global attack. And King did so much, Dr. King. And like I said, remember how I talked about the people who didn't like. So there's another figure I talked about earlier in the month, and that figure pops up again. So while J. Edgar Hoover popped up, in trying to take down Marcus Garvey, once again, J. Edgar Hoover pops up in trying to take down Martin Luther King. He clearly has had an agenda of destroying and attempting to destroy black people. But it's interesting the lengths he went to try to destroy Martin Luther King with this COINTEL program. One of the things he did, and the funny thing is, if you say this to somebody, like they'll think you're just making it up, like it's a conspiracy theory, but it's actually, the evidence has actually been, found and verified that the FBI tried to, they were, tapping, watching Martin Luther King, tapping his phones and his communications, and they were actually gathering information on him that wasn't related to any criminal activity. They were gathering personal information on him, and they attempted to use that personal information to destroy him. So they attempted to use his extramarital affairs as leverage to get him to commit suicide. This is the FBI attempted to extort and blackmail Martin Luther King Jr. into killing himself. Like I said, this is so important in understanding the obstacles. If you're really dedicated to change, if you're really dedicated to improving the lives of the people, what you have to look out for and what you can expect, because you got to know who your enemies are. And I think the experiences that Dr. King went through further enlightened him as to who his enemy was, and I don't think he fully appreciated it initially. Because once that happens, once that happens, you got to realize that you're dealing with some really diabolical individuals, and I think it actually strengthened him and made him much more non-apologetic. So in later life, they like talking about the "I Have a Dream" speech, but not so much about the the anti-Vietnam, his opposition to just needless wars and unnecessary wars all over the globe. Although now there are individuals who are focusing on certain aspects of his life that may be much more favorable to their own doctrines, their own ideologies, and stuff like the Poor People's Campaign. So he was, in later life, he was dedicated not just to fighting for black people, but he's like, hey, there's a class problem in the United States, and instead of just spending money on unnecessary wars, money should be spent to uplift the people. And he was careful to try to distance himself from socialism, despite the fact that there were some themes of more him being very supportive of social programming, but he was trying to not, because he saw how much hostility the government had towards him, and he didn't want to be linked to communists. But it is interesting to see what he believed and what he advocated for. And we have to be willing to look at what he advocated for and who he was. And once again, don't deify here historical figures, but respect what they accomplished and see, okay, well, what do we need to do? What steps do we have to take going forward to accomplish our goals? What goals do we have to accomplish? So like he was a a believer in integration, and there were some people who disagreed with his integrationist message. This is a question we're going to have to ask ourselves. Was that a lofty goal? Was that a beneficial goal, objective? And we're going to be asking ourselves that a lot quicker than you may think, because I actually have plans in an upcoming video to discuss some competing philosophies. And that's why I really like this portion of the month, because it gives me the opportunity to discuss one of the most interesting aspects of the civil rights era. But I'm gonna leave it there for now, for today. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up. Comment below if you have any thoughts. Anything you think that I missed about, because clearly I missed it. This man had such a long and impactful life. He accomplished so much. He did so much. Oh, like the Nobel Peace Prize. You know what I'm saying? So definitely I missed something. But if you think there's something I missed that you wanted to hear talked about, or that you think people need to hear about, yeah, put it in the comment section. Let me know. And I will see you next time on Escaping the Echo Chamber.